Hello, and welcome to the Total Mind Success Podcast. My name is Donick S. Cause. My guest today is Dave the Shef Sheffield. Now, the Shef is spelled S-H-E-F, not to be confused with C-H-E-F, but Dave does wear a real chef hat when he's speaking and being all around wonderful. So, Dave, first of all, thank you for being on the show, and welcome to the show.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Donick. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you to the listeners of your program or your podcast who are lending us their attention and their time. So,
Great.
Looking forward to it.
Well, fantastic. Now, Dave, or the Chef, as I should say, is an author, a speaker, and a marketing guru. And I think the topic for today is going to be about getting out of your own way. Is that correct?
Certainly, Donick. You know, I find that I've been speaking. I'm one of these guys goes to conventions or speaks at conventions, rather, whether they're regional, national, sometimes international conferences, sales meetings, etc. And so I get to see a real wide range of people who are in a variety of professions. Some of them are entrepreneurs. Some are exceptionally successful business people that run large businesses. Some of them are part of a team that, they work. I just got done speaking at a national convention of administrative professionals, for example. It's a great group of people, and everywhere in between. But getting out of your own way is really a crucial theme to success, no matter how you might define success.
So what exactly does it mean? How do we get into our way in the first place?
Well, that's a great question, Dan. And what people tend to do is they tend to fall in love with their story, whatever their story is. And obviously, if you have a pulse and are older than the age of about 3, you've seen drastic change in the way that business is conducted, in the way that communication methods are evolving continuously, literally every single day, if not quicker than that. And you need to really be flexible and observant, as well as having a little bit of predictability. Now, we all enjoy comforts. We all enjoy doing things our own way. It's our comfort zone, but no change happens within our comfort zone. No growth happens within our comfort zone. We always have to stretch. We always have to grow. And so sometimes, for example, what I hear from a lot of small business owners and or entrepreneurs / solopreneurs, if you will, is that they have to do everything because nobody's going to care about their business the way that they do. Well, that may be true, and undoubtedly any entrepreneur who's been in business for a length of time understands that, when it boils down to it, you're the last person who gets paid, and you want to make sure that the business is growing because the business is truly your baby. That being said, your baby can only get so big without other people's help. Now, I'm not suggesting that people grow these monolithically huge companies unless they truly desire that. I mean, if they can, that's wonderful. But in today's day and age where, as Thomas Friedman wrote, "In the world is flat," you can build a staff of a virtual staff, if you will, and as well as a group of other peers or trusted advisors, and we'll talk a little bit more about that slightly later on in the interview, that can help you along the way. I believe Tim Ferriss, the author of 4-Hour Work Week, 4-Hour Body, super awesome dude. He says he's a big fan of hiring people who play at what he has to work really hard at. And it really makes sense. So, in one sense, it's delegation is key, but also you got to be mindful. Donald Trump, great example, trust but verify.
I think it was Ronald Reagan said that also, trust but verify. Of course, he had something more sinister in mind, which was the Russians. But you say that there's 3 pillars of success. What are they, and why are they so crucial?
Well, Donick, there's 3 foundational pillars to success. No matter how you define it, it could be being a successful parent, being a successful business owner, employee, whatever. But the 3 pillars that I talk about in my live programs and on many interviews are attitude, We've all met people who can brighten a room, some of us when we enter it, others when we leave it. But yet, attitude is so crucial and so important. And one thing I like to remind people of is that they are the thermostat. They're not the thermometer. Now, I'm not one of these guys that walks around and says, hey, always be positive. Always be happy. That's not freaking realistic. There's going to be stuff that happens. People get sick. People die. Sometimes you lose the deal. Other tragedies happen. It's completely normal to understand that you need to experience a full range of emotions. However, way too many people view a setback as their first shovel, if you will, into the grave. And, attitude is so absolutely crucial to that. The second pillar is intake. And intake, much like if you were to, if you wanted to get into great shape, Donick, and you saw a personal trainer, and he or she would pretty much look at a couple of things. They'll say, all right, number one, I want to see a food log. I want to see everything that passes your lips. You need to write it down. Everything that you ingest, if you happen to be eating a ton of junk, a ton of processed food, a ton of sweets, if you will, drinking no water, well, it's going to be pretty evident that your fitness goals are going to be really, really far out of reach. The other thing a trainer's going to do is say, all right, what are you going to do with it? It's time to sweat. You can't pay somebody to do your push-ups for you, if you will. But when I mention this in my seminars, a lot of times I'll just ask the question, how many of you watch the news or read some sort of newspaper or electronic version of such, either right before bed or right when they wake up in the morning? And typically, depending upon the crowd, over half of the audience raises their hand. Now, all mainstream news is going to do is it's going to fill your head with a bunch of junk, usually, that you can't do anything about, give you a whole bunch of things to worry about, and it's essentially like somebody dumping the world's outhouse into your mind. And if you do that right before bed, my gosh, what a catastrophic amount of information for your brain to chew on. And with your intake, one of the things that I mentioned, and I'd invite your listeners, they can find part of my 10-day challenge. It's right at my site at howsbetteryourbest.com. That's howsbetteryourbest.com. They can download this for free. The 10-day challenge, part of it is to go off of media autopilot. And, media autopilot is just simply doing things out of rote or habit, if you will. I always watch the 6 o'clock news. I always watch the 10 o'clock news. I always read the paper, whatever. Well, it's never been easier to program what you take in terms of your current events. Obviously, we've got the web. People are listening via podcast, for gosh sake. They'll be able to download this in any number of countries, I'm assuming. And so be selective about what you put into your mind. Certainly right away in the beginning of the day to set your foundation. Right away before you go to bed, take a pause, empty out your thoughts, your intake, and journal them if you'd like. And, fill that void that used to be unintentional media noise with something positive. And it could be a book. I don't care if they're my books or somebody else's books. It could be audios. There's a lot of terrific, very motivational YouTube things out there, or blog posts or podcasts like this. Great information for people to fill their minds with, because what you put into your mind will predict your future and will create your future ultimately. And the last thing is the power of associations. Now, I know, Donick, as you and I were talking as we're setting this program up for your listeners, we have some high-achieving people that listen to this podcast. The people that listen to this podcast are not couch potatoes. They're not people suffering from recliner rot, kicking back, doing nothing ever with no plans and ambitions. The people that are listening to your podcast are going to be successful. They're going to take life and what it has to offer and find a way to maximize the most out of every single thing that they possibly can. And so associations are incredibly crucial. Surround yourself with people that are upbeat, people that are knowledgeable. Think about the best boss that you ever had ever. And of course, if you're a solopreneur, it really sucks when your boss is being a jerk, because you just got to look in the mirror to scream at him, right?
It's yourself, yeah.
But nonetheless, think of the best bosses, the best business owners, if you will, that exist. They surround themselves with people who are better at certain things than they are. That's a sign of strength. You can always pick out an exceptionally weak and insecure leader because they always want to be the smartest man or woman in the room. And so, surround yourself with people that are doing great things. And the cool thing is, I've never had somebody who was further along in their career. If I wanted, like, for example, when I was starting to speak, I wanted to get around people who were successful in doing things at the level that I wanted to do them at. And I've never found anybody who wouldn't talk to me maybe on the phone or, podcast, emails, whatever, and just kind of help me out just a tad, certainly in the very beginning. So associations are absolutely crucial.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Associate with people better than you. The old cliche, birds of a feather flock together. Well, associate with eagles, not sparrows and crows, or
right.
turkeys for that matter.
Sure.
As far as the media goes, I agree with you 100%. I used to be a professional hypnotist many years ago, and that's one thing I would tell people is don't fill your mind with the media and the news and things like that right before going to bed. And I'll take that a step further at this point and say eliminate all media and listen only to my podcast.
There you go. And, what they don't realize is you just delivered some kind of a subliminal trigger, so they'll be compelled to only listen to your podcast. So,
absolutely, yeah.
Kudos. Wonderful, wonderful.
Okay. Now, you use an expression, BOGA, B-O-G-A. What does that mean?
Well, and this is a favorite everywhere I go. As a matter of fact, I get notes from other professional speakers who say, I stole your BOGA idea when I was speaking in San Antonio or Tuscaloosa or wherever, and that's cool. BOGA basically stands for a bowl of grump ass. And we've all met people that wake up and look like they've been baptized in lemon juice. They're sour with the day. They're just grumpy at life. And those kind of people are just terrible. Kind of harkens back to the attitude thing. And I do an illustration in my programs, which I'm not going to describe because you can't really talk it straight. But everybody gets it. I mean, people that are suffering from BOGA, and which is usually the result of focusing on the wrong things and asking yourself terrible, terrible questions, because as you know, with your expertise as a hypnotist, your subliminal mind never shuts off, and it will always find an answer or what it thinks it could be possible answers for questions that you ask it. So if you are asking yourself, why am I so broke? Why am I so fat? Why is my relationship terrible? Your mind's going to go, well, A, B, C, D. Ask yourself some better questions. How can I be successful? Well, this guy got picked for the promotion, not me. Well, why not me? What would it take for me to get there? If you're trying to close a deal, close a customer, well, we can't do it. I know, but if you knew how we could make this thing happen, what would that look like for you? So practice some constructive question asking, Dominic.
Yeah, absolutely, because I think it's Tony Robbins that also talks about the power of your questions. And then, like you say, if you ask your mind why you're doing something wrong, it's going to tell you, here's why you're doing something wrong. So, again.
Oh, yeah, I love Tony Robbins. Great guy.
Really is. Now, you mentioned small business owners, especially solopreneurs, and thinking that nobody's going to be dedicated to their business like they are. But yet so many of them often feel a sense of overwhelm. I even feel that sometimes as a solopreneur. What can people do about this sense of overwhelm and having to do everything, and there's just too much to do and the day's just too darn short?
Certainly, Dominic. A lot of times, if you're in a cyclical business, for example, if it's springtime and you own a landscaping business, yeah, man, you're going to be working 15, 16 hours a day. It's time. It's crazy season. If you're in retail, the holiday season is going to be nuts for you. But most of the time, what I notice are two things when entrepreneurs feel incredibly overwhelmed. And I use entrepreneurs in the sense of either solopreneur, small business owner, or somebody who's in sales. Because really, even if your paycheck comes from a company, you are running your own business. Almost everybody is. And but one thing that I find, one aspect of it is they're blurring the lines of activity and productivity. And you can't do that. I mean, figure out the things that are that you're really great at, and then do not try to polish up things that you're absolutely terrible at. And Marcus Buckingham it talks about this. He's a wonderful speaker. I can't remember which book it is, that he wrote this in. But in paraphrasing, he says, if you are a 3 on a 10 scale of doing a task of, bookkeeping, for example, and if you worked your tail off 5 hours a day, 7 days a week, you could maybe get to a 5. Wouldn't it make more sense for you to hire somebody who's already an 8, a 9, or a 10 at bookkeeping so you can pursue what you like to do? And so many solopreneurs, certainly you can relate to this, Donick, creatives especially, myself, we tend not to do too well statistically with some of the left-brained or the more analytical type of things, and that's why it's really, really crucial to allow our minds to immerse in what we're great at. Keep mind of what the other stuff has to get done, but you don't have to do it. The other thing that I see is really crucial is entrepreneurs, small business owners, they need to shut off and think and strategize. I'm always boggled when I have a small business owner, when we do a client meeting, for example. I'm a partner in a marketing company where we help people create awesome brands and, get their message and their marketing out and so on. And inevitably, first-time meeting, they're going to list off their, 12 strategic objectives. And 12 strategic objectives are wonderful if they're over a span of several years. However, pick 1 or 2. Work on those things. Get some measurable progress. Otherwise, you're going to be spreading yourself way, way, way too thin. And I guess the third thing I could add to that is, with rare exception, you got to have a little bit of harmony. And work-life balance, I hate that term because it's almost like, I never bring work home. I never bring home to work. Well, let's face it. If you get into a fight with your spouse, it's going to set a tone. And, it's unrealistic to not bring a little bit of that to work, but yet find the harmony. Shut off some of those emotions, whether they're at work or at home. Most of the time people will gripe to their spouse about a problem at work, and their spouse presumably can't do anything about it, and they'll go to work and they'll gripe to their coworkers about something their spouse did. It just doesn't make any sense. So find a way to create some harmony and a plan for some downtime.
Okay. Now, you've got a book coming out called, I love the title, Blabvertising, The Art of Word-of-Mouth Advertising, and let's talk about that a little bit.
Certainly, Donick. Well, Blabvertising, The Art of Word-of-Mouth Advertising, should be out the fourth quarter of this year, which is 2013 when we're recording this, and it's all about the art of word-of-mouth advertising. Now, think about this. If your good friend says, geez, you know what, I went to Jeff's auto shop, and boy, did he treat me right on my car repair. I tell you, it's fair price, quick service, just white glove all the way. Can't recommend him enough. He's just awesome. Any amount of advertising, interruption advertising, whether it's online, offline, billboard, radio, television, Hulu, whatever, is going to just be lost in the dust because your friend's credibility is essentially vouching for this mechanic in this case. And with Blabvertising, it's really about a couple of things. Number one, being keen enough to listen to what your prospects are telling you they want. Unfortunately, a lot of people, especially people in sales, forget that God gave them 2 ears and 1 mouth, and, that should be kind of a good instruction rule on how to use those 2 things proportionally. And secondly, find a way to craft a compelling, or I often refer to it as a sexy message on what you do that's memorable. And I don't mean sexy as in sexual in a sense, but I mean head-turning, something that people are going to go, wow. And I'll tell you, the genesis of this Blabvertising, it slipped out of my mind because I was speaking in I believe, a Chicago suburb to maybe 100 or so small business owners. And we were talking about one of the people in the audience said, yeah, I was talking with this client, and I mentioned, geez, we do, stucco repair for high-end homes or something. I don't remember exactly what it was. And somehow I said, well, he's kind of blabbing about this, and it was advertising that, and so it's kind of like Blabvertising. And I didn't think a thing about it. But, Donick, within 2 weeks, I received no fewer than 12.5 emails from people who attended that seminar telling me how they were blabvertising their business. And that's when the light bulb went off. And so we really, started pursuing it. And the book, the content, and certainly the programs filled with great ways on how you can grow your business, build your personal brand and or your business brand, and even how you can harness blabvertising to find the perfect job or internship too, if it's applicable to people who are reading it. It's all about social interaction.
Okay. Now you say in the book that the elevator pitch itself is dead. What do you mean by this, and what should we do about it?
Well, elevator pitches, according to the person who is usually on the receiving end of the elevator pitch, sometimes feel like you're taking an elevator to the top of Mount Everest. Because what's supposed to be a 20 or 30-second pitch winds up being 2 to 3 minutes. And if it's uninteresting or not applicable, it just isn't, it gets filtered out. The human attention span in the age of Twitter and on-demand media and all of this sort of thing, people, I just saw a study a while back where they found that the average human has an attention span of about 7 seconds. That's 7 seconds. That, incidentally, I believe, is 1 second shorter than a goldfish, for God's sake. And so, yeah, no doubt. And so when you think about it like that, you need to find a way to tweet it, grab it. In some ways, I love Twitter because it forces people to condense and condense and condense and condense again. And you have to take whatever it is that you do and keep on condensing it and basically throw it out of fluff. And that is in the spring. Now, there's times when if you're writing a bio, for example, for maybe you have an industry publication that you contribute to or something, it's okay to have a little bit more filler or useful content in there if it's in printed and so on. However, people really, you got to catch them, you got to grab them, and let them go with it and listen to them. At networking events, for gosh sake, which everybody should be a part of networking events, everybody, whether it's Chamber of Commerce events or local charities are awesome, or, professional clubs or organizations, civic clubs and so on. And, at those sorts of things, be keen enough and listen. Listen, because back to the whole 2-to-1 ratio, people will tell you exactly everything that they need to do business with you.
Sounds very, very useful. So you said the book's coming out the last quarter of this year, is that correct?
Yes, it's right now it's just about completed, and I don't need to get into the details of the process of book publishing and so on, but it'll be going up for endorsements and jacket quotes, and of course, Donna, you're going to be receiving a preview copy as well, and I'll welcome that on as part of my book too. That would be great to include your quote or thoughts within there, and then we'll be putting it out. We're targeting sometime probably late October, and it'll be out on all the major ways that people can get books, and if there are bookstores anymore, I think there are, certainly on Amazon and other avenues too.
Yeah, I'd love to give an endorsement to the book. If nothing else, for the title alone, but I'm sure there's going to be a lot of good content in there.
Oh, I tell you what, I came up with it, and I just titled the program that, and I received 4 calls from major publishing houses wanting the book.
Wow.
I'm like, what do you mean? Well, we like the book. I'm like, you haven't read the book. Well, how do you know? Because I haven't written it yet, for God's sake. And ultimately, we don't need to go down. You and I talked previously about the changes in the publishing world, but nonetheless, hey man, a catchy title, the way you brand yourself, that's key, no matter what it is that you do.
It really is. Let's talk about this. Make that, I guess, our closing question, then you can talk about your website, etc., how people can find you and your marketing business. But branding is something you normally think of with a small business or a big business, for that matter, but it can also apply to individuals as well. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. Now think about it. Let's say that you work in a large company, for example, and if you need to go and get a purchase order approved or something, you know who to go to in accounting that gets that stuff done. I mean, there might be 12 people in accounting, but if, Sally is the super get-it-doner babe, or whatever she likes to go by, you're going to go to Sally. And the same thing is true in any kind of occupation. As a matter of fact, a lot of the engagements I'm doing for personal branding for big organizations, they certainly don't want their people to go and just do little startups or whatever, but they understand the crucial importance of personal branding within that, because unless somebody can tout their own brand, come up with a memorable, a little bit of a sizzler headline, if you will, excuse me, like you wrote about in your books, you can be famous, you got to have a grabbing headline, and the people, you're going to just blend into the woodwork. We're not in an economic game that will hold on to people like that. We've already seen outsourcing for blue collar, many for white collar, and the people that know how to brand themselves internally tend to become as indispensable as you can possibly get.
Any suggestions for coming up with your own personal brand? Branding is good. I guess most of us realize that, but how does one go about doing it?
Well, you sit down and you disconnect, and when you're in a state of constant connection or response, and your email thing is pinging, and you're checking social media, or your people are texting you or calling you or whatever, you're in reaction mode, and your brain can't basically run on two tracks at once. At least the male brain can't, certainly. So you need to just kind of shut off and get quiet, get grounded, and just start to think. And I like to just jot some things down. When I work with I work with a lot of best-selling authors, and have helped, I think, 27 or 28 authors now as of today, who started from little to nothing, and now they're doing exceptionally well. Most of them are. And just had a coaching call with a guy, and we literally took 10 minutes and we started hammering out, okay, what's that grabber of a title or that grabber of a brand? And guess what? Most of them were not great, but every once and again there'll be a little bit that you can grab, and then a little bit over here. Also, get a couple of people and pull them together. The power of the mastermind is absolutely crucial to do this. Find a few people whose opinion you value, and whether you get them on a conference call, whether you meet with them in person or whatever, you allocate 5-10 minutes, say, okay, now let's hash this thing out, and you'll have that collective synergy that will ultimately come up with something. And it may not happen right away. For example, you mentioned from my intro, the Shef. When I first started speaking, I didn't have the Shef moniker, but after about 6 months of speaking, my coach that I had hired to help me grow a speaking business said, people aren't going to remember Dave Sheffield, but they'll remember the Shef. But, first 4 letters of my last name are S-H-E-F. So, we thought, let's run with it. And literally, I told you previously, and people, I show up to conventions, and there's people in aprons and chef hats and recipes for success and blah, 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 blah. And it's crucial importance of a brand. And even taking it to the nth degree, you look at Nike, arguably one of the most recognized brands in the entire world, and they don't even have any wording. It's just the swoosh. So understand that your personal brand is just the same as well. Get a little edgy. Get a little bit memorable. And they can find out more, too. If your listeners want to visit my site at howisbetteryourbest.com, that is howisbetteryourbest.com. I think you'll probably put a link in the show notes here for that. That would be, I'd be happy to connect with them. I'm also very approachable. Feel free to, email my office, or you can, tweet with me or connect with me on various social media platforms too. I do read all of my own information that comes in, and do my best to get back in a timely fashion.
Okay. Tell people a little bit more about what you do, just so they have a better sense. And you do book marketing and other things. So tell us all what you do.
Well, certainly. Predominantly, I deliver really awesome, interactive, motivating presentations at conventions, meetings, and conferences that are packed with a lot of humor and a lot of awesome content. And so I want to give the audience a great takeaway value. I want to help the event planner leave the audience feeling like they got great value and know why with some action steps that they can go and follow that up with. I also consult with and coach authors, speakers, and small business owners on the power of branding and creating their brand, and specifically in the speaking and writing arena, which anybody who is an author that says, I'm just an author, but I don't want to speak, hang it up now. You ain't going to make it. So you got to get out there and speak. That's how you're going to do it. And just kind of helping them show the ropes, or learn the ropes, rather.
Excellent. So tell us once more where your website is.
You bet, Donick. It is at alwaysbetteryourbest.com. And, I know I'm sure you can probably put a little link in there, too. They can find me on my in your show notes, or certainly you Google me. I'm all over the place. I also write for a number of different publications on marketing, branding, motivation, leadership, and a few other aspects. And, really committed to helping people achieve what they want to achieve and create the life that they truly deserve.
Great. That's a great note to end on. I've been talking with Dave the Shef, that's S-H-E-F, Sheffield, author, speaker, motivational guru. And Dave, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I look forward to hopefully meeting some of your listeners at some point in time in the future.
I hope so. You're listening to the Total Mind Success Podcast. I'm Donick S. Cause. Thank you for listening, and please join us again.